Did you know that the September 11th attacks had a huge impact on the entertainment industry, most notably on the world of cinema? Films underwent huge modifications, release dates were postponed, scripts were rewritten, and some projects were completely shelved. Let's take a look at all the changes and the effects that 9/11 had on the film industry. I think the best place to start are the movies that were edited after the attacks. Many of you might have watched these movies without realizing the significant edits that were made just before their big screen debuts. It's important to remember that movie production is a lengthy process, and this catastrophic event took filmmakers by surprise, placing them in a difficult position. Let's start with the movie that's iconic as New York City itself, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Slated for release just 8 months post 9/11, this blockbuster had its marketing strategy rolled out well in advance. Posters were sent to every movie theater in America, with Spidey looking directly at the Twin Towers, reflecting in his eye. There was also a commercial that showed Spider-Man stopping a bank heist by trapping their helicopter in a web between the towers. After the attack, they recalled both the poster and the commercial. But the entire movie was filmed well before 9/11 happened. They now had to go in and digitally erase the towers in the skyline for every single shot. I actually covered this in a previous TikTok, but they missed it twice. The first is when Peter is testing out his powers. You can see them in the background right here. And the second is when we get to the montage of Spider-Man helping people. In this shot, you can see those towers reflecting in his eyes again. There's also a pretty rough scene. In the original cut, after the upside-down kiss, they showed the skyline with a big focus on the towers. But unfortunately, the next scene was of a burning building. So, of course, that was not going to work. They replaced it with this shot instead. But they didn't just edit things out. Sam Raimi actually added 2 scenes to the movie in response to the attacks. The bridge scene where Spider-Man has to save both MJ and the children got an extra scene where the New Yorkers come together to help Spidey fight the Goblin. And these lines of dialogue were a way to show how New Yorkers came together.
You mess with Spidey, you mess with New York! You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us!
The other added shot was actually the last scene in the film. Patriotism was at an all-time high, so they decided to have the final scene be with Spider-Man hanging on a giant American flag. Pretty fitting, considering how united the country was at the time. Disney's Lilo and Stitch underwent significant alterations as well. The movie came out 8 months after the attacks, but their original ending was not gonna work anymore. The gang was supposed to hijack a 747 plane from the airport, then fly through a Hawaiian city, destroying the buildings, and then have Stitch jump out of the emergency door. Yikes. You can tell by the footage that they were already really far into finishing this scene, with only a few shots not fully animated or colored. They decided to keep the sequence, but change the plane to an alien spaceship, the city into a mountainous backdrop, and omitted a few scenes entirely, like this one with the oxygen mask. Speaking of Disney, Pixar now had a problem with their upcoming movie, Monsters, Inc. It came out only 60 days after 9/11, and this time the film was already 100% finished. But a funny joke at the time was now hitting an open wound. In the original cut, after Boo is seen at the sushi restaurant, the CDA comes to decontaminate the area. The way that they do that is by blowing up the building in a giant fiery explosion. It's obvious to see why this didn't make the final cut, but they had no way around this scene. The movie was already finished. So instead, they revamped the explosion to a plasma dome, which I honestly think works better anyways. Knowing that the original scene was an explosion explains why when you see Sully's bag later in the film, it has burn marks all over it, because it was in that explosion. Then there's the Bourne Identity, which was originally set to release on September 7th, 2001, and was postponed to early 2002 due to disagreements between the studios and the producers. That was lucky for everyone, because not only was no one going to the movies during the week of September 11th, like I said, patriotism was at an all-time high. After the attacks, the producers were afraid that because of the American government being the main antagonist, it would be interpreted as anti-American. The movie was reshot extensively, but this is one of the only scenarios where they didn't change the film. Matt Damon and director Doug Liman insisted that the film not be changed, and actually won the battle against the producers. Of course, it's now a huge franchise, so I'd say they made the right call. Another big budget action movie that had huge changes was Men in Black 2. The original climax of the film took place on top of the World Trade Center. The plot stayed the same after the attacks, but the location was changed from the towers to the Statue of Liberty. Nearly every movie that took place in New York had to digitally edit out the World Trade Center. Some of the films even got pushed back because they needed more time to edit, or because the subject matter was too fresh. For example, View from the Top, a comedy about a flight attendant, was postponed from Christmas 2001 to March 2003 simply because it involved airplanes. There was no sensitive subject in it, it just talked about flights. Another planned 2001 Christmas movie, The Time Machine, was pushed 3 months back because of a deleted scene of a meteor shower destroying New York. It didn't even make the final cut, but they still felt it was best to push the movie a little longer. Certain movies never made it to the big screen, like Jackie Chan's Nosebleed, which centered around a window washer at the World Trade Center, preventing a terrorist plot. You couldn't have picked a more unlucky script if you tried. James Cameron was actually planning to make a sequel to the Schwarzenegger movie, True Lies, but after the attacks, he came out and said, quote, "Terrorism is no longer something to be taken lightly." And most surprising was a planned sequel to Forrest Gump. They finished the script, but after the attacks, Tom Hanks said that the story was no longer relevant and felt meaningless. To be honest, I'm kinda glad that was never made. There was no way it could have lived up to the original anyways. I just don't see a world where Forrest Gump 2 is a good movie. And that's about it. The numerous alterations, postponements, and cancellations that Transform filmed in the wake of that fateful day. Post 9/11 Hollywood seemed to lean more towards lighthearted and fantasy genres, providing audiences with an escape from the harsh realities of the world. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something that you didn't know before. This is my first long-form video on this channel, so if you liked it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more film facts.